Is this thing on? Okay, it's on. Here we go. Hey Soul Seekers, thanks for tuning in today. My name is Teresa Coltrane and I'm a life coach and I specialize in helping people learn how to manage their inner critic. And so today I want to talk about the topic of loneliness. So this is kind of a heavy topic and I can really connect to this topic, and it brings me back to this time and space on my journey of when I first was going through my divorce. But the reason why I wanted to make a video about it was that it's a pretty common thing for a lot of people, and just recently I've had clients talk about it and I've had family and friends talk about it, and it's just a thing. It's a common thing, people have it, but I really started to hone in on my own experience and really kind of think about all the things that I've coached my clients through, based off of what I learned when I was going through the process, and I wanted to make a video about it and try to help other people. So that's my goal with these videos, is just to reach as many people as I can, to help as many people as possible. I believe everyone deserves to be happy and living the life that they want to live. And we can only do that when we can get through all of our crap, right? We got to get through all the guck to find ourselves so that we can be happy human beings and be creators and do what we're meant to do here. So today, so we're going to talk about loneliness. So it's such a heavy topic, right? Like, I wish I could be all sunshiny and bright about it, but it's not. It's a heavy topic. And when you're feeling lonely, it just feels very lonely, right? Like, you're by yourself and you're like, I feel so lonely, and you feel really sad, and you probably have like aching in your heart and maybe in your bones, and your energy is low, and you're feeling sad, and you probably feel a little hopeless. And that's just not a fun feeling to feel, especially if you're going through long periods of time of that loneliness, right? We're humans, and so we're conditioned to want to connect with others and, love and be loved and accepted, and just kind of have that whole space to kind of collaborate with people and be in a space with people. That's why we're here, right? So when you're alone, it can be really scary, especially if you're going through something that's new in your life, like a big transition. I find that loneliness can kind of come up when you are going through a life transition, such as maybe ending a relationship, or going through a divorce, or if you lost a loved one, or even a loss of a job, or if you're moving somewhere. All those times can kind of be lonely because you're in this unknown space and you're going through a transition, and it can be kind of scary because you don't know what's going to happen, and you're just kind of with yourself, with your thoughts, and you're just kind of there with it. So I wanted to share some tips that helped me get through my time of loneliness, and also I've been sharing these tips with clients and it's helped them as well. So I wanted to share them with you today. So I want to cheer you up. I want to make you happy. I don't want you to feel sad and lonely forever. And know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You're not always going to be in this space. So just know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I love that saying, that it's always darkest before the dawn. I feel like that's really true. Just when you're feeling like, oh my gosh, it can't get any worse, like you're just, oh my gosh, and then something happens, right? And so I want to share these tips. Maybe these tips can get you to the dawn or give you a little sunshine in your day. So, okay, so I'm going to just start talking about loneliness. Okay, so I want to share a part of my journey and where loneliness was a heavy thing in my life. So when I was first going through my divorce, I moved out of the house that I was living in with my husband, and I moved into an apartment. And at the time, I was very excited to kind of get into this new space, just to kind of start healing and really understand and make sense of what was going on, in my life journey at that point in time. But little did I know how lonely it would actually be to live by myself. And what I realized is that I'd actually never lived by myself. I grew up with my family, then I went to college, I was in a sorority, and so I always had people around me. And then even after college, I moved in with some roommates, and then after that, I moved in with my husband at the time. So I'd actually never lived by myself. I'd never been on my own before. So it was kind of a scary space to be in. Plus, I was going through the transition of, getting a divorce. And so I was kind of left with all these thoughts of like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? There was so much unknown at that time. And I was there by myself, and I feel like I was, I felt like I was, starting my life over. Here I was, moving out on my own, and all of my friends and family are married and having kids, all that stuff, and I was like, oh no, like I'm going backwards. So there's a lot of fear I had around being in that space by myself. And so the first, I would say, 3 to 6 months, I had a lot of fear of just being alone, to where every Friday night would come around and I would be like in a panic if I didn't have plans figured out for the weekend. I was like, oh my gosh, like the weekend's here, like I need to figure something out so I'm not by myself. So I'd be frantically making plans, trying to organize happy hours and like do all this stuff so I wouldn't have to feel in that uncomfortable, like lonely space. I would even do it to the point to where I would go do things I didn't even like, or hang out with people I didn't even like, to where it was just silly, right? Like I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so silly. Like why am I doing this to myself? Like this is just silly. So I got to a space where I was like, okay, I've had enough of being in this loneliness space. I want to take responsibility. I'm tired of, being in this space. So for me, it was a process of like, okay, I need to figure out how to get over this. So what came to me was like, okay, I need to learn to accept where I'm at. So that would be the first step I would say to your space, is just learning to accept where you're at and learning to love where you are at on your journey, which sounds kind of like harsh and tough at first because you're like, what? Like I'm feeling lonely. You want me to accept this? Like, no, that's kind of like what it feels like. But really, honestly, that's really where a lot of the freedom is once you can accept where you are on your journey and accept where you are in this time and space. And learn to love yourself in this space and love everything about this space, is actually a space where you can kind of free yourself in this area. So what I mean by that is just, coming to terms with, why you're there and what's going on in your life. Because oftentimes, we're so busy and we're so outward with everything, that we never take time to turn inward and really focus on ourselves and really understand, where we are in our journeys and what's going on in our lives. So when you're by yourself, you have no other choice to be left alone with your thoughts, right? And that could also be why, I was fearing being by myself, right? Like I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts. I had lots of thoughts of fear and worry about, going through this transition of going through a divorce. So it was a really scary space to be in. But what I realized is I had to learn to accept that that's where I was in my journey. Even though I had friends that were, getting married or having babies, and I was happy and excited for them, I, at some level, was like, oh my gosh, like I'm going backwards, and I would have all this fear. But I had to realize that my journey is separate from everyone else's. What I'm doing in my life is separate, and it wasn't part of my journey at that time. So I came to a space where I just learned to accept, okay, this is where I'm at in this point in time. And deciding to go through the divorce was a really hard decision, but it was a decision that was going to support my well-being. So I kind of sat there and thought, okay, I'm making choices to support my well-being, and this is where it has led me to. And so what I realized was that, okay, I'm by myself for the first time. What is it that I want to do? What is it that Teresa likes to do? And so I really kind of sat there with that because I never had that space. So I started with the self-acceptance piece. I started thinking like, okay, so if I'm in this space, which I know I'm not going to be in this space forever, I had to have a conversation like that with myself as well. It's like, okay, get a grip. Like you're not going to be, by yourself forever. This is just where you are at in this time and space. So, I kind of allowed myself to think that and get rid of that fear. And then I just kind of sat there and was like, okay, what is it that I want to do? What makes me happy? What is it that I can learn from this situation? Where do I want to go? And I think that was probably the biggest thing, was to learn to shift my attention from feeling sad, anxious, and fearful to, okay, what is it that I want to create in my life, and where do I want to go from here? So I started to slowly shift my energy from the fear, worry, and doubt to, okay, what is it that I can create? And so I started to focus on all the things that I wanted to do that supported myself and felt really good for myself during this space of feeling like I was alone. So a lot of it started with, journaling thoughts. Then it started with, okay, let's learn about this meditation thing. I always hear people talk about it. I feel like I need my mind to kind of get neutralized. Like I'm going to try this meditation. So I started to learn meditation. And then I started to listen to audiobooks that were related to my situation. And I started to watch TED Talks. And then I started to look up all the hiking areas in my neighborhood, and I would go take my dog for a hike. And then I started to look into, learning how to speak Italian, and then before I knew it, I got so lost in learning to support myself and learning to really just focus on all the things that I wanted to create that I no longer had that lonely feeling to where on a Friday night, if I didn't have plans, I was like, okay, cool. I can go home and I get to go focus on all the things that I want to create in my life. And so it became this safe space to really where I actually enjoyed learning to be by myself. So what really happened with this space is that I started to learn to create a new way I was thinking about my space of feeling lonely, right? I realized, okay, this is actually a space where I have time to myself to learn from what I maybe had mistakes from in the past and learn what I wanted to move forward with in the future. And so I really realized that time and space was actually a blessing giving to me, a space to kind of start over and a space to really tap into myself, which I'd never really done. I'd never really tapped into myself to really think about what is it that I truly want in my life, what really makes me happy, what makes my soul soar, and I was given that time and space to do it. And I was thinking of it as a lonely space because it was feeling lonely because I was on this journey by myself, but it also became a space where I learned how to self-love as well. And so that's a big part of this too. So once you have accepted where you are in your time and your space on this journey, giving yourself unconditional love with the process and loving yourself in every bit of piece of why you're in this time and space is huge. And that, my friends, takes a little while to do. I'm not saying that this is going to happen to you overnight, but if you start to make these small steps to learning to support yourself and learning to love yourself and not be seeking outward to get that support, it really, really shifts and changes the way you think about your situation. So a lot of times, the reason why I was feeling lonely was oh, I need someone to be here with me to make me feel better. Oh, I need someone to love me, or I need someone, I always was kind of putting it on the other person to give something to me to make me feel better. But what I realized is that we all are capable of making ourselves feel better. We just have to give ourselves what it is that we need. A lot of times we're focused on the other person giving to us what we need, but really we can provide that for ourselves. We can love ourselves unconditionally, and then that takes away the loneliness because you are loved and you do love and accept yourself, and you no longer need somebody else to tell you that. You no longer need someone to say, oh, I love you, or oh, I accept you, because you accept yourself, you love yourself. And when you get into that space of loving and accepting yourself, everything just kind of opens up for you. And so what I mean about the loving piece, for a while, I would read that so much in books, and that's what I'd like to say, is any book that you read or any teacher you follow, everyone's gonna have the same message, which is loving yourself. There's even a book called I Love Myself. It's a real thing. When we can love ourselves, our world opens up and possibilities are endless, but we have to learn to support ourselves by loving ourselves. And so there's many different ways to do it. For me, it was just learning to honor myself. So that inner higher voice that I had in myself that is always intuitively guiding me, learning to listen to that voice and do what it says, that was actually my first step to loving myself. But once I started to give myself a self-acceptance to where I was at on my journey, and then give myself unconditional love by listening to myself, doing things that made me feel good, hanging out with people that made me feel good, reading and watching things that made me feel good, just to where every day I started off my day doing things that made me feel good, to where I got into a routine of that I still actually even follow, and it's my self-love routine, and I follow it every day, and it helps me, and it learned to slowly put me into alignment with my true self, which has proven to be the best thing I could have done for myself on my journey. And I wouldn't have been able to do any of that unless I was by myself and unless I felt that lonely feeling, to where it daunted me, to where I was okay, I have to do something about this. So being lonely for me ended up really actually changing my life, because I was really able to tap into myself and create this whole routine to where I self-love and do this whole process. So loving yourself is actually taking responsibility for where you are in your situation, right? If you know that you're in this situation and you no longer want to be in this situation, try to see what ways that you can take responsibility for where you are at in this time and space. And so for me, that was creating that self-routine. So, and I had no idea what I was doing. I just started to make it up as I went along. And like I said, it was like I started to listen to that higher voice. It was like, okay, you should rest, or oh, you should do this, you should do that. Like I just started to slowly listen to what I want to do. I had realized so much of me was so external, and I was listening to everyone else around me about what I should do except for myself. So no wonder why I had been lost on my journey, and no wonder why I was feeling very confused, right? So my routine kind of started out with like I had a lot of busy thoughts and busy mind and fear and stress, and so I kept reading about meditation, and people kind of kept talking to me about that. So I started to say, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start doing meditation in the morning and at night. So, and that's also when I felt the most lonely, was in the morning and at night. So I started to feel that feel the void. So it was like where I felt lonely, I started to replace it with something else. So I replaced it with meditation. So I got really good at practicing meditation, and I started to feel the benefits from meditation. And my mind started to get clearer, my anxiety started to fade away, I started to become really sharp and focused and just really calm, and then I got really positive and happy and hopeful. And so all of that came with meditation. So I started my day and ended my evenings with the same with meditation. On top of that, my next favorite thing to do was to go take my dog for a walk. And so after I would meditate, we would go for a walk around the lake before I would go to work. And it was a really pretty lake. It was so beautiful when the sun would come up. It was just this very like nice, peaceful space to be in nature with just me and my dog. And even in that space, I started to practice, which was a gratitude practice. So after meditation in the morning, we would go for a walk, and on the walk, we would take a gratitude walk. So I started the process of gratitude in my routine. So not only was I, taking care of my mind, then I was also being outside, walking, getting good exercise, getting fresh air, and then I was having gratitude on top of my situation. So which kind of sounds funny, right? Because when you're in this lonely space, you feel really like hopeless and like nothing's gonna work out. But what I decided to do was focus on what I had at that time. And so once I started to focus on what I had, it really shifted my energy, right? Because at first when I was going through the divorce, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm losing all these things. I'm losing a house, I'm losing a husband. Like I had all this like this feeling of like, oh, like I'm losing everything, but what I really did is I actually shifted my attention to what I had. And what I realized is that I had a lot of things. I had my health, I had my mental and physical health. I had, a job, I had a place to live, like a roof over my head, I had money to buy food, I had money to have a dog. So then each morning I would start this like process of going through my head of like thanking God for everything that I had. And like by the time it would take me 30 minutes to walk around the lake, and by the end of the walk, like I'd have like so many things I was grateful for. By the time I got to my apartment and get ready for work, like I was on a high because I was like, wow, like I've got an amazing life. Like look at all the things I have in my life. And so it would really shift that energy in me as well. So I stuck to that routine like glue because it felt so good to me that if I didn't do that routine in the evenings and the morning, I would just feel off, and then like kind of the negative thoughts would slowly start to creep in, and then everything would kind of come back. But the routine was so important because it kept me focused on recreating a new experience and belief about my situation of being lonely, and it really allowed me to have the space I really needed to connect and get in alignment with myself, which really led me to my whole journey of moving forward and really creating a life that I love and finding my passion and purpose. So my loneliness really served a space for me, and I hope that this video inspires you to kind of think about your situation differently. What is it, are there ways that you can face this loneliness? Is there something you can learn from this loneliness? Is there something that you can turn your attention to creating more of what you want in your life? Is this loneliness a space for you to connect with yourself and really like maybe heal and address some things that you've been holding off on for a long time? In what ways can you take responsibility to helping yourself out of this situation? And are there books you can read? Are there movies you can watch? Like, falling in love with your life and who you are and what you're doing is the best way to like cure that loneliness feeling. And a lot of times when we do that, when we fall in love with our lives and who we are, then it's like we are at such high vibration, we're attracting all these good things into our life to where we actually aren't even lonely anymore because we've learned how to fulfill ourselves. So I just really want to empower you to, try to think about your situation different, try to see the opportunity for growth for where you're at, and just really give yourself that unconditional love, give yourself that acceptance, and give yourself time to work through all of this. And even if you do all this, even if you, learn how to self-love and self-accept, and you create a routine of building a life that you love, and you still kind of find that you're lonely, that just happens, and sometimes that's just what it is. Just take it for what it is. It's just you're feeling lonely, and at different points in your life you're going to have different periods like this, but at least you have the freedom to tap into yourself, learn how to listen to yourself, and find out what it is that you're needing that might be causing the loneliness, and learn how you can fulfill it on your own and get really good at it and just love yourself unconditionally. So thank you for listening. I hope you found this helpful. I have other videos on my website. It's letgolivecoaching.com. So feel free to go there. I do have some breath practices and guided meditations that you guys can subscribe to and listen to if you're thinking about creating a practice yourself to overcome loneliness. I have an Instagram account called Let Go Live. I'm also on Facebook, so feel free. And also on my website too, I offer a free coaching session. So please take advantage of that. If you're someone who's been struggling with loneliness and you're really wanting to learn more about my routine and how I kind of overcame being lonely, connect with me. I'd love to spend some time with you. You can go to my website and subscribe for a free session. That would be awesome. So again, thanks for listening, Soul Seekers. I'm wishing you so much love, happiness, light, and good health. So what are you waiting for? Let go of this loneliness and start living your life today.